So, if you're a family member, a spouse, or a friend of somebody who's experienced childhood sexual trauma, you might be wondering, well, why would they feel guilty or shame over something that was obviously out of their control? But if you yourself are a survivor of sexual trauma from childhood, then you're probably really familiar with the feeling of guilt or shame and hold some sense of responsibility for what actually happened to you as a child. Here are some common reasons why that actually happens. So, one of the most common reasons is that the person says, well, I liked it. I liked the attention that I received. I liked feeling special. I liked getting validation. I liked being acknowledged. I liked being sought after. I even liked the physical touch aspect of it. I enjoyed, having somebody there with me. They may even say that they liked the person. The person was fun. The person was who I wanted to be around. The person made things seem better, even though there was this element to it. Another common one is, well, my body responded. I was able to, have an erection or to become aroused. And if it's really abuse and I'm not consenting, then why in the world would my body respond to it? Also, they might say that, I never said no. I never said stop. I never said, don't do that. Please don't go that far. I never even told on them. I didn't say anything about it ever. So those are some common reasons that you might hear from a survivor of childhood sexual trauma, that they still feel guilty or that they're holding some sort of shame over it. The beautiful news is that that person doesn't need to feel guilt or shame. And here's some common reasons why that is. So the first one is that a lot of times when you have somebody who's experienced this as a child, one of the contributing factors is that they weren't taught about healthy sexuality in their home. So, good touch, bad touch. Dangerous situations versus safe situations for your body, the development of the body, who's safe to talk to if something does happen, what are some bad situations for myself, what are some good situations for myself, what's healthy talk, what's inappropriate talk. Another one that we really see too with individuals is that they lack a good understanding of boundaries. When is it appropriate to say no? Who should I say no to? When should I say no? Why should I say no? Am I acting selfish in saying no? Am I being disobedient? Am I being bad? Because maybe those are things that they've been conditioned to hear during that time. Knowing how to talk about stuff when it comes up too is a really important one. So again, if they don't have this foundation of, well, I don't even know what's good and what's bad, it's all just kind of this blurred line, I don't really know how to feel about this, they don't know, who's safe to talk to or what they can talk about with a safe person, even when it comes to the subject of sex or physical touch. That's going to be a major factor for sure. Another factor that's important to remember is grooming. And I actually have another video on grooming that I would encourage you to check out. But with grooming, the perpetrator, if it's more than one occurrence, so meaning that there were some repeated occurrences, a groomer, the perpetrator, is going to be looking for somebody who might be on the fringe, or somebody who is, who looks left out, who would be an easy target to go ahead and, who would really receive that validation or receive that attention. So, and this doesn't just come from a home that's, got a traumatic background involved in it, that has abandonment issues, that has abuse going on, addiction. It doesn't have to come from a home like that. This can come from a single parent home, a home where both parents work a lot, a home where there's just a lot of kids and there are certain kids who don't get as much attention as other kids, a home where there's special needs within the home. And again, that kiddo may not have as much attention as they may need or want. So it can come from all kinds of different dynamics. Childhood sexual trauma, unfortunately, it doesn't discriminate, right? Everybody is definitely within the eyes of it. So with a groomer, it's important to remember that there's slow, gradual touch that's happening, slow, gradual introductions to things which are inappropriate. So it may start with, inappropriate jokes, and then it starts with maybe some raunchy movies, and then it turns into some soft porn, and then it turns into something a little bit more, and then it turns into Well, do you want to know more about that? I can teach you about that, or maybe we should try that. Those are some common things. It can also be slow and gradual with touch. So whenever I would go in the room, he would, massage my shoulders, and that felt really nice. Then he would kind of just get lower and lower, and I would become desensitized to it. Maybe even I said once, whoa, what are you doing? That's a little too low. And he said, oh, I was reading that this connects to the back muscle, and I just thought that you maybe wanted to relax. Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then all of a sudden it becomes routine that this person is just grabbing my breasts. And I don't even think anything about it because it was so slow and gradual that I became desensitized to what was actually happening. So with you being groomed, with a survivor of childhood sexual trauma being groomed, it's important again to remember that they may have questions and they don't know who to go to for those questions. I mean, 90% of childhood sexual trauma survivors, they were perpetrated on by somebody they either knew or a family member. So these are people that they're supposed to be trusting, that they're supposed to be obedient to, that they're supposed to listen to, that they're supposed to feel safe with. So if that's happening with these types of people and something feels wrong or something feels odd and I want to talk about that, but again, I don't know who to talk to about that or how to even talk about that, I don't think I'll be believed, then I'm probably going to stay quiet, and it's going to be easy for that perpetrator to either directly or indirectly threaten me to keep the secret. So another common issue we often see too is, again, that body response. So, well, I was able to be aroused, so how could it possibly be rape if my body was responding? I think the important thing here to remember is that our bodies are made to respond to sexual arousal. They're created to share that with somebody safe and for it to be an enjoyable, pleasurable experience between you and another safe person. So your bodies are created to respond that way. And when you are either a child or an adolescent and you're being introduced to this touch for the very first time, it's not abnormal for your body to respond, especially if we're considering the grooming tactics where it's slow and it's gradual and you're becoming desensitized to things and you're becoming comfortable. So if somebody's coming in and they're saying the right words to you, they're validating you, they're giving you attention, they're giving you lots of love and things that you maybe are missing elsewhere, this element of this physical stuff, it's just, oh, well, that's just a piece of it. I guess it's not really that big of a deal, right? So that's where you get the things of touching and fondling and goes further and further and further. But you might wonder, well, okay, there were definitely parts of that that hurt, and I didn't want that, and I was afraid to say, ow, stop, because then that person maybe got angry, or I didn't want to upset that person, or I thought that I was pleasing this person, I thought that I was being good, so I didn't want to upset what was actually happening. Well, when you think about like penetration, yes, of course it's going to hurt, because that's harder for something to become gradual with, right? I mean, you're talking about a child or an adolescent's body. Their bodies are not quite made for that of an adult, obviously. And so when that is introduced, that is going to be painful, and it's different than what they have previously experienced because their bodies weren't slowly, gradually introduced, desensitized to that beforehand. And so this is where we see a lot of, I didn't want to upset the person, I thought I was being good, that really did hurt, but. Also, you might hear and see, or yourself if you experience this, where they'll say, well, there are parts of it that I still fantasize about today, or there are parts of it that I still enjoy in my sexual life today. And that's, again, because your body, that's the first time that your body has been introduced to this touch. And so your body actually stores that. And if your body stores that, oh, this happened and I was aroused by that, that is going to be desired. That's going to be sought after. It's going to be fantasized about. So that's not abnormal. It doesn't mean that that person who experienced that, who maybe still struggles with fantasies or desire for that, it doesn't mean that, well, it must not have been that bad because you still obviously like that or want that. It's not what it means at all. It simply means that that's how the body interpreted the trauma at the time in the mindset of the child or adolescent who was being manipulated by a perpetrator. Those are really important key things to remember. So to recap here, you shouldn't hold guilt or shame. You're not to blame. you shouldn't hold responsibility for somebody pushing on adult relationship things, at the very least, onto a child or an adolescent. Even if you think, well, I'm mature and that's what I really wanted, you're cognitively, you just weren't developed in that way yet to have such an adult relationship with someone. Additionally, if you think, well, maybe they didn't know that it was really wrong. If somebody's not willing to do that or talk about what they're doing with you in front of another adult, obviously they know that something is wrong. The adults understand what is happening. They have enough of an understanding about their bodies to know what they're doing to a child or an adolescent is wrong. If you don't have the knowledge of what is good, of what is bad, of who to talk to, of how to talk to them, of boundaries, if you don't have that core foundation, you're going to find yourself in these circumstances rather easily, unfortunately, as a child or an adolescent. Also, with being groomed, if you're not receiving the attention, the love, the validation, the nurturing, the things that you need at home, somebody else is going to recognize that and they're going to be able to use that against you. So it's so important that, as adults, we really instill strong internal resources for our younger people, for them to know you are good, you are worthy, your body is an amazing and wonderful temple and it is worthy of being shared with your spouse, if you believe that it should be shared on your wedding day. It's an amazing experience that we don't want tainted by what is currently, unfortunately, occurring in a lot of places to a lot of people too early on, before they can cognitively really understand the damage that it's going to have on them and what it's doing to them at that particular time. So your body is a temple, and it is wonderful. And whether or not you've experienced childhood sexual trauma or not, it doesn't mean that you are so marred, or that person is so marred, that they're no longer worthy of having healthy sexual interaction. They're absolutely worthy of it. It's still an amazing and beautiful gift. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done, though, around the issue of guilt and shame. And if that person can release that guilt and shame and really understand that I'm not responsible for what happened to me in this instance, then they can really start to move forward in their healing process and enjoy healthy sexuality. I hope this has helped either you or somebody that you know. Take care.